Welcome to the Northern Affinity on our live video stream again. As usual, we're here on our LinkedIn page, Facebook page, and over on Twitter as well. Delighted to say that today we're here with Philip Stoker. So Philip will introduce himself in a minute, so I won't steal your thunder on that Phil. But I'm sure most people would agree with watching this that financial well-being and personal finances is understandably a very big and a very hot topic at the moment for people, from so many uncertainties in the world, and whether it's the furloughs or redundancies or mortgage holidays and all that kind of thing. I think everybody has probably examined their own personal finances to some extent in the last couple of months. So it's a real hot topic. So Phil, so I won't go on. I'll let you introduce yourself, Phil. Do you want to kind of explain who you are and kind of what you do, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Okay, it's Philip Stoker. I'm an associate partner with St James's Place. I'm a financial advisor. I've been doing the individual advice for 3 years, but prior to that, since 1999, I was a pension consultant. So helping large employers and trustee boards with their occupational pension schemes. So I'm a bit of a pension techie, which probably makes me first on the list for your dinner party. But that's my background.
Absolutely. So obviously we are now 11 weeks into the lockdown, I think it is. I'm kind of lost with it all. Be interested to know kind of how your world has been affected, and kind of what's changed in the last few months.
I think there's been lots of change, obviously, but I'd actually say there's two issues that really, obviously, the drop in the markets, and that's caused people great worry and consternation, and that's something that it's my job to sort of try and help calm people. But one positive thing I'd say is to do with technology, in the sense that we are in a very conservative industry. It's very paper-based. And what I've seen in the last 11 weeks is a huge increase in the way that we can do things online compliantly. And it's made everything so much easier in terms of dealing with applications, compliance, identification. Everything's going online, and that's been a huge improvement for a conservative industry. And without this, that wouldn't have happened in such a short period of time. I also think as well that actually doing these virtual meetings has meant that actually we're more accessible than we have been before. You don't have to arrange to drive to a client. And as much as face-to-face is very important, I think the actual fact that we now have this virtual meeting as now a standard way of communicating, I think that's a huge improvement.
No, absolutely. And for those who don't know, I've got a background as well in the financial services industry, like Phil, and I know it's a very there's a lot of paper-based of that industry, and that was kind of going to be my next question. Really, was how things do you think will change in the whole, should we say, just generically speaking, across the financial services sector in the future for the better? Because quite often things like this do kind of bring things that we kind of shine a light on things that maybe need to change. So yeah, I mean, what other kind of things do you think we might benefit from the long term in changes in the financial services world?
Well, I think technology and embracing it, because if we take simple things like identification, before that was a very manual process, but now with electronic identification, 85% of that can be done fully compliantly online, which means that you're not sending things through the post registered, worrying about them being lost. So I think that's a huge improvement. I also think that what we'll find is fintech that'll take over, more important in terms of people. I think what you'll find is information will become more readily available. So I think it's actually quite an exciting time. I think that what we'll see is processes being streamlined. I think we'll see more efficient way of delivering, financial information.
Absolutely. So I mean, kind of going on to you, Phil. Kind of how did you start doing what you're doing with St James's Place, and how did that all come about?
Well, if we go back to, I think it was 1999, and I worked for a company called Gissings in the city in London, and on pensions. And you never go into pensions on purpose. It was something that I moved into, but I took to it, and I became a consultant, as I say, advising employers and trustees. And through that, what you saw was that you had people in occupational schemes who had built up quite a large pension pot. And then in 2015, the Chancellor changed the rules. We had pension freedoms. And before that, people just saved their money and bought an annuity. Now, the default is actually to go into something called pensions drawdown or flexible access. And what that means is that people have to look after their own affairs. And so, having seen this, where in many cases with occupational schemes, this was their second biggest asset, apart from their house. It really was a major part. And I felt that people needed help with their retirement, because it's now people are responsible for their own planning and preparation. And so that's why I moved from the advising the big corporates into the individual side, because I felt people needed that help and guidance. So that's why I moved into the, and also I think I came back to Leeds about 12 years ago, having left London. I went down and did my mission work for a while, then came back to Yorkshire, where I was born and bred.
Good choice, I'd say. So I kind of touched on it right at the start, that for a lot of people, it's been a very difficult stroke, uncertain time. So what kind of things do you generally do to work with, I guess, individuals, but also potentially employers to help people? And like I said, obviously in this time, but also kind of in a normal, inverted commas, world.
Yeah. Well, I think that actually this time has changed things in a way, in the sense that because of the worry and consternation, and if you just look at the statistics in terms of the surveys, if you look at stress, what causes stress, 59% of stress is caused by financial worries in people. If you look at the statistics on employees, 25% have lost sleep because of financial worries. So financial worries is a big, it's a big part of the stress. So one of the benefits of being part of St James's Place and a FTSE 100 company is that they have a financial education package, which is education to help people and give them guidance on their financial situation. The great thing is that it's actually it's no cost to the employer, it's no cost to the employee. It's a program. It's designed in terms of, if you look at the way that it's structured, we try and aim at the different age groups, so it's not the same size fits all. So life stage 1, getting started for the younger people. We go all the way through to life stage 4, where it's the older approaching retirement, and we look at on a guidance basis, not an advice basis, on a guidance basis, trying to help people through the different stages of life. And I think that's why, with the current situation and the worries that it's caused, I think that's a very valuable service that we can provide. And it's one of those things that I because of my background in that financial corporate background, I made sure that I got the license to be able to do the education program. And in this day and age, I think that's really important. So part of my background has driven me to do this, the financial education, the guidance before we move into advice. So it's that service to help people and employees, employers. And that's what I feel is, it's become very important in this particular time.
No, and I would 100% agree on this. Obviously, I kind of touched on it earlier. I have a background in kind of commercial finance world, and one thing that this whole situation has really highlighted to me is that so many people don't feel comfortable talking or understanding that world of in commercial finance, because obviously when with all this started, there were grants and loans and various other things. So many people didn't understand because they'd not had that exposure to it. And so the education side of it is so important before, like you said, you make any decisions on what you're going to do with money. Understanding is absolutely key, and I think it's something that's really I've noticed over the last couple of months is probably lacking. Whether that should be done in workplaces or in the education system, I don't know. That's not for me to answer, but I definitely think that the education side of things is something that needs to be improved.
It isn't straightforward. That's the whole thing about it isn't straightforward, and you just need those tools to help you.
Absolutely. Now, kind of going on to that kind of issues and problems that people have. What generally when someone comes to you, what is there a particular trigger to come to you, or is there a particular issue that they're? I know we're talking very generally here. I don't expect any specifics, but
I think really what happens is that people know where they want to go, but they haven't got an idea of how to get there. So I think I've described as financial advisor, wealth manager, but I think the best one is financial planner. Because what we do is sit down with people and say, what do you want to achieve? And then try and plan to how you're going to get there. And people have different ambitions and different aims, but generally what we do is say, right, that's where you want to get to. This is where you are now. And how do we actually get you from A to B? And it may be via A to D, via B and C. And that I would say you can almost exclusively say that's where it starts. I want to get somewhere, or this has happened. How does that affect me, and how do I plan to get to this point? So I think the planning is the best way of describing what we do.
Yeah, so I guess from the personal point of view, it's probably very similar to what a business would do. You have an end goal in mind, and you work backwards. So for someone like I might come to you and say, Phil, I want to retire when I'm 55, and you say, okay, well, let's look at your situation, and you throw all the things in the pot and essentially work out what I need to do to get to that point.
Yeah.
And I guess is that right? In that kind of
that's exactly what we're saying. Is that people have these ambitions, and sometimes they can't have those. We do the planning, and it's not realistic. Yeah. And then at least people know well in advance it's not realistic, or what the actual achievable aims are. And that's what we do. That's probably the most important thing that we do.
Absolutely makes sense. So kind of moving forward a little bit, obviously I think the last few weeks and months for a lot of people has been, should we say, generally speaking, survival mode. How do you think the whole kind of financial world will be impacted in the say medium term over the next couple of years, up to 5 years?
I'd go back to I think there'll be a bigger development in products. So we talked about the advance in IT and online and the technical advances. I think that will spread into the products, and I think we'll find that there's that becomes more attuned to the environment as it changes. You've got markets, obviously. We've seen volatility, which we had 10 years of really no volatility, unusual markets, and now volatility has returned. And it's really educating people to the fact that we've returned to those times, and that the old times weren't quite normal. And that's a difficult thing to do. But it goes back to the education. It's actually taking people, and I don't think that will change. I just think what will change is the efficiency with which we do it and how we do it. And I think you'll find for a lot of the where it's less technical, I think it will a lot more go online. But there'll still be, because it doesn't matter what the government does, they always interfere and make it complicated, and people will need help. And that's where sort of I think you'll always need that guidance and help, and that helping hand to get you through in terms of the future. So I think the future is bright. I think what we'll see is I've just seen it, this huge advance. I can't explain that. How much I've seen in 11 weeks that normally would take 3-4 years to do has happened in 3 months, and it's being forced upon the industry, and that's a great thing.
No, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I guess the other element is kind of the individual's mindset as well, is that maybe probably all of us are a little bit complacent about, the normal world that we've been living in, and things will just continue on and slowly but surely kind of evolve, don't they? But as you quite rightly said, there's been such a big change in a lot of areas that maybe people start thinking, well, actually, I do need to contingencies in place, maybe, as well as planning? Do you think that there could be a big change in kind of mindset on the individual basis?
Yeah, I think also on the attitude, in the sense that if you look at the way that things have changed in terms of government and how they're behaving, if you look at environment, I think environment will become a lot more important to people, and I think that will filter its way through. When I say the products and such like, that'll filter its way through. That there'll be lots more, sustainable views taken out there and sustainable products coming out.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And then just kind of one final question for me, really, Phil, is that if people were starting to think, well, I do want to think about my personal circumstance, I want to think about my personal finances, what kind of guidance would you give them and kind of where to start, I guess?
Well, let me just quickly go back to my sort of pensions background, because back in 2015, they did the freedoms, and then in 2016, they changed the basic state pension. And back in 2016, the basic state pension went from £119 to 155. Now, if you're a politician, that's wonderful, because you've done this basic state pension. But the fact is, if you didn't have a full career working with state second pension and the SERPs in the old days, you could have expected a lot more than £155 from the state, more like 180, 190. So in essence, the state, it sounds wonderful as moved its state pension up, but actually for a lot of people, it's less than they would have got. Not for my generation, we're lucky. But for your generation, you'll get a lot less from the state than we did. If you look at, I'm 59, 60 very shortly. My state pension age is 66 and a half. So if you're younger than 69, for 59, it's 67. There is in legislation for 68 in 2045. They're talking about bringing that forward to 2035. So in essence, the state is pulling away from helping you. So what I was trying to say is that actually preparing now is really important. And the most important thing you can do is a budget. Actually work out what's coming in, what's going out, and work out. And that's why we say the planning is where you are now. And that's so important. That's the first basic thing. And then think, right, where do I want to be and what do I have to do? So I think appreciate the fact the state's pulling away and that you're going to have to do an awful lot more yourself. But the basic thing you can do is look at your budget and say, right, what's coming in and what's going out and what's my situation at the moment? And that's the, I would say that's the start and be all and all in terms of where you are now. And from that, you can plan and say, well, I've got a problem or I'm lucky, and how to build from that.
Perfect, Philip. No, I think that makes perfect sense. Thank you very much. So, like, for anyone watching this video, if they want to find out more about Philip and what he does, he's on our website. He's got a profile on there. If for whatever reason you can't find it, obviously do let me know. Or let us know at Northern Affinity, and we can point that out. So yeah, I just want to say thank you very much, Phil, for your time. It's been really good, really, really interesting, and I think people have got benefit from that. So yeah, thank you for everyone watching, and Phil, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.